pathways that break down and burn fat, with NMN and resveratrol. NMN boosts NAD+ in every cell, and NAD- is the universal coenzyme for lipolysis. It's needed for both breaking fats down and extracting the energy via the mitochondria of cells. All fat burning is entirely dependent on NAD+ levels. NMN is the ultimate fat burner. Get yours at humannutrients.com.
When you take this compound, it stems the cytokine storm, stops the damage, quenches the fires if you like, and also powers the cells to recover. You also sleep a lot deeper on it. It's good for cognitive enhancement. It's good for a sharper mind, gives you more energy.
Is it good for anti-aging and stuff like that?
It's fantastic for longevity.
Yeah.
It actually, as this stuff, they actually say that the decline of NAD within your cells is the first biomarker or hallmark of aging.
Yeah.
NMN is a precursor to NAD+, a critical coenzyme in every cell in your body. It helps with fat oxidation and lipolysis.
I'm not a 12-round fighter. Look at me. I'm a new breed of heavyweights. All them heavyweights, Mike Tyson, Sonny Liston, Jack Dempsey. Oh, yeah, you don't throw combinations like Rocky Marciano. Because I ain't 14 stone, that's why. I'm 18 stone, I'm heavy. It's hard work. This guy here is a phenomenal talent. We're going to cheer for him 3 times. Well, how many belts you got now, bro? 5.
The Ring Magazine and the WBA Super, I think. What's he doing here?
I don't care about strong. I have to have skills.
And he threw them down.
Skills in boxing.
Yeah. Why?
You're not strong. How did you beat
I'm not sure his team understood it.
I've got skills. Let's do the I had character. And determination. Listen. I just want to say. Look, if you knew my story, you would understand the passion. I ain't no amateur boxer from 5 years old that was an elite prospect from my youth, bro. I was going to jail. I see some tight little youths in Reading jail. I got bail and I started training my arse off. Because if I got sentenced, I wanted to be able to fight. I bust my case. But cousin Benga, where's he at? G14, raise your hand.
Hello and welcome back to the number one podcast in the sport, where I think everyone listening had to sit through that Dave Allen, Arslan, Makhmudov. I don't even know, what do you call it? Really, what do you call what we saw on Saturday night? That's like the dark days of Matchroom. Remember when Matchroom were coming off Sky and going to the Zone, and Hearn was just literally picking names at random and going, just put any old crap on Sky. I don't care anymore. I'm the $1 billion baby, right? Do you remember that? I'm the $1 billion baby. So we had to sit through like utter drivel on Saturday night, sprinkled with a bit of, joy and good news stuff and all that sort of stuff that we like about boxing, right? Then we'll come on to Kelvin Fawaz in a sec. But let's talk about Matchroom and Saturday night. 8,000 people genuinely bought tickets to watch what? What did they come to watch? I don't believe 8,000 people paid to watch that. I don't believe they all bought tickets. I reckon schools and boxing clubs got free tickets, stacks of them, because on paper that card was mediocre, and on the night it was probably worse. Like, this is terrible. And let's just accept we've run out of stars in this country. Yeah, we've run out of stars, and Hearn has proved himself incapable of building stars. Who has Eddie Hearn built since Joshua? Nobody. Do you remember when he was like, I make stars and I only want to get involved in boxing if I can make other stars? And there's no one that you can point to and say, this is the guy that Eddie Hearn made. Paul Heyman's probably contributed more to combat sports than Eddie Hearn has in the last decade, which is a sad indictment. But look, Saturday night we got to watch Dave Allen fight Arslan Makhmudov. Look, personally, got nothing against Dave. Like Dave as a person, interesting enough character. But I've always said this about Dave. Dave, and I think I used this one before, Dave's like the Liam Ridgewell of boxing, right? All the right ideas in the world, always 2 seconds off. He's one of those guys like, I knew exactly what to do. I just didn't do it. And you believe him because he knows boxing. He's a smart guy and you can see him trying to do stuff. But nothing exemplified what I mean more than the last punch he threw in that fight. When he threw a big right hand and Makhmudov was just there literally counting. It's like, if I move too early, people will think the fight's rigged. And he was just there like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. And the punch is still coming, by the way. He's at 5, 4, 3. Stops, makes himself a, I don't even know, double espresso. Next that, 3, 2. His mum phones him. Like, Aslan nie prosi, nie prosi, nie parluski, nie. Da. Hangs up, 2, 1, and then just pulls back, and Dave ends up punching the ropes, and Aslan kind of just does a Billy Joe Saunders on him, like, I turn my back and go, what the hell was that? And that's signified where Dave is, because if we break down how we got to this point, Johnny Fisher was meant to roll over Dave Allen, and Dave Allen was just like, yeah, to beat me, you got to be good. Like, you can't just be rubbish and expect to beat me. And Johnny Fisher was like, well, if Eddie's made the fight, I should win. And Mark Tibbs was probably going, if Johnny's not going to train, I don't want you to train. No, I'm sorry, if Dave's not going to train, I don't want you to train. That's probably how it's gone, right? And Johnny shows up and gets his ass handed to him twice. Now, here's the thing. Dave being in this position was never part of the plan because there's no way you can really put Dave. If Dave had beaten Makhmudov, you're just putting him in with Dillian, aren't you? Let's be honest. That's the rematch you're going to do. There's literally nothing there to do with Dave. Dave's the wrong side of 30. Dave just needs to get paid so, he's got something to fall back on when he retires, and I wish him all the best in that. Makhmudov, we're just reheating bullshit, aren't we? That's it. We're just reheating him so we've got another body in case we need to put a heavyweight fight together at short notice. We can whack him in and go, he had a great performance against the dangerous Dave Allen. And that's what's good. That's what we're going to get now. And it's going to be like, against Kabayel, mate, you know what, I had a dodgy kebab. I just wasn't feeling it on the day. If I fought Kabayel again, it would be a different story. And there'll be some people who'll be like, yeah, well, might be true. Yeah. The reality is Makhmudov wouldn't win a British title. I don't know if Dave's ever going to win a British title. He might do in this era because it's not where it needs to be. But you wouldn't put Dave Allen in with Moses Atalma. It would be unpleasant to watch. It would be cruel to do that to him. And so, if that points to the whole problem Eddie Hearn has, his stable is that thin that Dave Allen is probably number 4 on his roster in terms of guys that can make him some money. And this is a man that was trying to sell Matchroom for $1 billion. Yeah? And you've got Dave Allen fighting Arslan Makhmudov. Imagine showing that to investors and going, you want to put money into my company? And there's probably guys sat there going, I reckon I could beat one of those two guys. And I don't train. And you watch that fight, just watch it. And all Makhmudov did is trust his chin and go, if I just throw straight punches, I'm always going to get to Dave. And then Dave's just trying to bomb this guy out of there. And you're like, I don't know if this is the guy you're just going to bomb out of there. The guy was wrestling with bears like 2 weeks ago. Do you know what I mean? You saw him in the video there tussling with Winnie the Pooh. So I'm like, what did you think you were going to do to a guy that's wrestling with bears, man? Like, he's out there, rocking it out with Grizzly Adams. And you're with Jamie Moore and Nigel Travis. 2 different breeds of human. But Makhmudov just did the basics. He literally said, I'm going to box my way to a 12-round victory. If he had the stones to really go after Dave, could he have stopped him? Probably. Because there were some nasty uppercuts he was throwing. And credit to Dave for taking them. But I don't want to keep saying Dave Allen's brave. Like, I don't think brave is a great adjective for a boxer that doesn't win at the top level. Because you're going to get hurt. And that's always my worry with Dave. Dave's going to get hurt. He needs someone to protect him career-wise. And I don't think he has that. And I don't even think he wants that. I think in his head, he's the master of his own destiny. And in that case, he's going to fall back and go, Cool. Go do you, my friend. But that fight, what do you describe that as? That's like a York Hall type fight. Like, you know, you pay your 60 quid, your 100 quid ringside and watch that. I mean, with a few ciders, bump into old Bill, ask him how the used car business is going. You just go and watch that fight and go, oh, it's a great slugfest for a small hall card. But if you're hanging a TV company's future on that, ooh-wee. So the question is, what do you do if you're looking after the career of Dave Allen? If you're Travis, if you're Jamie Moore, if you're Eddie Hearn, what do you do with Dave? Because Dave's not a world level guy. And I don't know why. Like, he's still young enough that he could have faster hands. But it's not like he came in at a record low weight. You'd want to see Dave coming in, I reckon, in the 235s, 233 to 238. I think Dave could come in at and be good. Right? But there's a way Dave wants to box. And it's big right hands, left hooks to the body, and then whatever happens, happens. I don't know if anyone's going to fix that. I don't know if anyone's going to change that on him. But he's far too intelligent to not realize that ain't working for him. You know, but he's also too long in the tooth to start thinking about rebuilding his fundamentals. So what do you do with him? I think with Dave now, you just put him in fun fights. Fights where it's just going to be a slugfest and someone's going to go. Like the Johnny Fisher fight. Find more guys who can give him Johnny Fisher type fights. And you have Dave somewhere on the card where he can pick up the energy before the main event. And I think Dave will be brilliant at that. You pay him 100 grand every time. And he could do that for the next 3 to 5 years and make a good living for himself. I don't see any kind of like career management upwards working for him. Like him versus Huey Fury, he'd get pinged all over the shop. He'd get absolutely pinged from pillar to post. And like Huey's not world level as things stand. In terms of Makhmudov, he gets, if that's the guy that's going to fight Joshua, I would honestly just put 100 pounds on a first round stoppage. He will stop, like Joshua will stop him in a round. As soon as Joshua feels one right hand connect, he will stop him. Stone cold. No matter how bad Joshua is now, he's still got that in him. Like that bully part of him is still there. He'll roll over Makhmudov. And then we'll start talking about, well, Anthony Joshua just beat a world level guy. The boxing bullshit factory needs to stop. That's all I'm going to say. It needs to stop, and it needs to stop soon. We're in a pretty dark phase in terms of boxing at world level. And all of these shenanigans are evidence of that, and they're a reminder that Hearn is super desperate at the moment. Like, Joshua's not going to have fought in 2025, so there's no revenue from that. He's had to flog Conor Benn twice, yeah, to get some money. And ideally, he'd have had him fight 3 times, but Eubank wasn't playing that game. Now, if Joshua fights once or twice next year, maybe he'll bring him back, but part of me doesn't see Joshua fighting. Like, there's only so many times you can run away to Ghana to fight before you got to come here and face the music. Just saying. But we'll see where all that goes. That was a disappointing main event for a heavyweight. Like, I think at heavyweight level, it shouldn't be about gimmicks and stories. It should be about 2 really good boxers in a competitive fight. We did not see that. So let's go from the ridiculous to the sublime. Kelvin Fawaz. What a story. If you follow my Q&As every Wednesday, well, now they're stretching to Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, all on Instagram. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, you're missing out on some mildly entertaining and engaging content. But on there, I talked about Kelvin Fawaz, and look, as long as I've been coaching, I've known about Kelvin, right? Because you hear, you hear stories. But everyone that I worked with that sparred him, I said, what's he like? Because he doesn't look ultra impressive. Like, he's not a guy where you're like, oh my God, who is this guy? But he hits people, and there's a different kind of reaction. Because you see people suddenly backing up and going, I don't know if I want to go forward like that anymore. As I always told me that he hits hard. And that's what people say. He's got bricks for fists, essentially. And he's a tough kid. Like, you don't really see him bowled over or or splattered or anything like that. So he's a tough kid and he can crack, right? And that all belies his appearance. Because if you look at him, like, there are people I've heard say, he must be gay and all this sort of stuff. I don't know. It's not my business. But what they're basically saying is he doesn't embody the traits of masculinity. And I just say, listen, if you hit as hard as he does, you don't need to. And I think what happens in boxing is people underestimate him based on appearance. And they go, nah, he can't be all that. And maybe Junaid Bostan did that. And Junaid Bostan lacks the amateur pedigree that Fawaz has. Because Kelvin Fawaz beat everyone he was supposed to beat. Kelvin Fawaz wouldn't have a loss against George Liddard on his record. He wouldn't have a loss to Dennis McCann on his record. It just wouldn't happen, right? Not at his best in the amateurs. And that gets forgotten about. So Kelvin was a really good amateur, and I think people know the story. Paperwork didn't line up and all this sort of stuff. He couldn't get the authorization to work, so he was having to hustle just to keep a roof over his head and all this sort of stuff. Training people in backyards during COVID for a bit of change and all. He was grinding, man. And for him to have a moment like this, where he just out-toughed Junaid Bostan, which is becoming a recurring theme in British boxing right now. These guys 35 plus are just having very little trouble with the guys 27 and under. Just bullying them. Like, it's two different species in the ring. Because Kelvin Fawaz, let's just say he's in his late 30s. I can believe that. He could be 60 though, I don't know. But those guys in their late 30s are just having the time of their life with these kids. These kids are soft. And I tweeted this, I said it's the pad work. They don't have punch power because they're hitting pads. And here's what people don't tell you. There's nothing worse than doing pads for someone that can really punch. So what do? You keep backing away. And so you make the boxer more confident than he should be. The punch bag doesn't do that. The punch bag is like, I can take your best shot and go nowhere. And that's how you get your real kind of man strength in the ring. Your real punching strength. You know, where you got the weight in the shot. Because when you're hitting that bag, you're literally trying to tweak every last sinew of muscle to generate force. Because the bag's unforgiving. Whereas the pads, like, especially if you got like an older pad guy, it's not great. Like, I've always said pads are massively overrated. If you're a boxer and you rely on pad work to get good, you're going to end up like Junaid Bostan. Fragile, soft. As soon as you got touched, you don't want to know. And this is English level. This is nowhere near world level. This is English level, and you're getting touched and you're rolling over and like, oh, get me out of here. And Kelvin was like, no, we're here to fight. And you know how real it is when he didn't even know he had won. He just showed up to administer a beating and find out, are you as tough as me? And the answer was no. And I don't know if that should be a stain on Junaid Bostan's character. Well, definitely not at English level. Like, they could have put him in with someone of his generation and he might have been all right. You can't fight these guys like Kelvin Fawaz. No, you're not built for that. But if you're not built for that, I don't even think you should be boxing. If I was Eddie Hearn, if I was the promoter and I saw what happened to Junaid Bostan, I'd just be like, mate, go and do something else. Like, you're not built for it. Like, look, I look at guys of my generation at the lodge, Martin Welsh, Danny Davis. They'd have been better than Junaid Bostan in there. You know what I mean? Like, they would have been a lot better than Junaid Bostan. And go and look at their careers on BoxRec. They didn't have lengthy careers. Because back then, like, there were levels to the game. But if they were around now, man, they'd be picking belts up left, right, and center. And that doesn't get talked about enough. The fact that a lot of our boxers are soft. Soft, fragile, not up to the level. And why is that? You're being trained by people who are looking too much into scientific literature and not into stuff that has worked throughout history and across sports. As they say up north, hard fucking yakka, man. Get some hard fucking yakka. That was a Camp Detox. Well, I can't remember what the dude's name was, but that was his expression. He just makes you run up hills with people on your back. He's like, you gotta do some hard fucking yakka. Hard fucking yakka, man. That's the only way you get tough in the sport. And he wasn't wrong. People don't do hard yakka anymore, man. People don't work hard anymore. Like, I see boxers, I might make Yen had to fight for a year. You're not even on universal credit. He's like, nah, you know, a little bit of PT on the side. I'm like, you're not on universal credit. If you haven't boxed for a year, you're unemployed. You're unemployed. Go on universal credit, man. Get your rent taken care of. Do you know what I mean? Get yourself some protein powder. But this is what I mean. Like, these boxers in this generation are soft. They're soft. It's why we get smoked by people from other countries. It's why guys can come over from Ghana and be competitive, or Tanzania and be competitive. They're tough. How do you fix it? You go back to basics. Yeah. You stop boxers coming in telling you what they're going to do. Yeah. And you start really flogging these guys, because they're not getting flogged. And we're not filtering out the rats, which we should be doing. We should filter out the fragile. Oh no, we've got to increase participation. We've just watered down the sport. You know, like, I look at some of these amateurs coming through now, all these, like I told you, media types and marketing execs, and I work for an NGO, yes. I just come to box for the japes and the fun of it. And people allow these people to float around in gyms. Never had to prove themselves. Like, I've seen some dog shit. And people just go, well, you know, you got to welcome everybody. And, like, your background doesn't necessarily bother me, but you got to be tough. If boxing's not a tough sport for tough people, then I don't want any parts of it. And that's why I kind of feel like I'm 1 foot in, 1 foot out at the moment. Now, I look at sport now and people say to me, where are there tough people? I say rugby league. Go watch rugby league. It's tough. People say it's not as tough as it used to be back in my day. They're probably right. But it's still the toughest sport for me. You watch the NRL, you're like, I don't think anyone could just do that sport. It's hard. But back to Kelvin. I'm so happy for him. His reaction when they announced the result, his reaction is everything boxing is about. They need to get that clip of him reacting to the fight where he's like, I won. That needs to be sent around the world to say this is why boxing is potentially the greatest sport on earth. You won't see that anywhere else. All the times where he was like, they're going to rob me, they're going to rob me, they're going to rob me, they're going to rob me of my dream and my path. And all of a sudden, the doors open up to the British title and he can't believe it. So late in his career and he gets that. That's crazy, isn't it? Can you imagine being Kelvin Fawaz and you're like, they're going to give it to the Matchroom boy. And they're like, Kelvin Fawaz, your hand goes up. You don't even believe it. You're like, oh my God. Can you imagine that moment? It doesn't matter what he does now for the rest of his career. He won't match that moment. Because that moment was just so human. And we don't get many of those. That moment was like, what? Me? And now the thing with him is he'll go viral for a bit. And then the usual suspects will come out. You know who I'm talking about. They'll be out on channels like Boxing King Media talking about they were best friends with Kelvin. I'm Kelvin's dad. You know the usual suspects will pop out and, try and claim credit for what was Kelvin's own performance. He's a brother like me. Yeah. When I was training back in 1989 and I saw Kelvin Fawaz and he reminds me a lot of Bobby Stoker who boxed in 1911, all that sort of stuff. I don't want to hear it. So here's what I'll say. I want to see where Kelvin's journey goes because I think there's a lot of headroom for him. Especially they keep giving him these guys 27 and under. I don't think they've got an answer for what he's got in his fists. I just don't think they do. And he might be the guy that just decimates Matchroom's kind of next generation because they're all soft. They're all soft. Too many trainers trying to be father figures and social workers and all this sort of stuff and not focusing on trying to create monsters. Let's get back to creating monsters. What else we need to talk about on that card? Reece Bellotti looked like he was robbed. Don't know if he was robbed, but I'd rather have seen him win that one. I think this Josh Padley story's kind of run its course now. You got some money for stepping in last minute, great. But you know what I mean, Boba Bellotti did the business, man. Give him his due, give him his credit. You know what I mean? But yeah, that there was a small hall card that Hearn's trying to convince me was a big deal. If Dennis Hobson had put that on, I think Porky would have asked some questions and said, is this the best you can do? So let's just have a sense of perspective when we look at that. I'm not patting Hearn on the back for that. When you're meant to be the best in the business, the global promoter. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. Let's just stay on the Matchroom theme and talk about what happened in Philadelphia. You know, when Hearn signed Boots and he was selling the dream, he was going to do this with Boots and turn him into the greatest of all time, and, you know, why can't he be spoken about in the same breath as Terence Crawford? Well, paradoxically, he's having a Crawford-type career, isn't he? If you think about Boots, Boots has got to be 27, 28 now, minimum, maybe 29. And there's still no signature victory on his record. No signature victory at 147. Well, clearly he stepped to 154, so nothing there. When you look at his record, there's a lot of gatekeepers there. Your Stanionioses, your Thomas Delormes, etc., your Van Heerdens. So you've got gatekeepers and junior gatekeepers. But there's no one top of the tree. And he could have caught guys like Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman at the end of their run. And so you got to wonder why he didn't. I don't believe he's scared, and I don't believe he's soft. I think Boots is the real deal. And those who follow this pod, I said there's a very real possibility that Jerome Ennis misses all the action. And he ends up with a CV that looks, excuse me, remarkably hollow considering who he is. So there's legit a real risk that you look at his record and you go, but he was way more talented than that. There's no Crawford on there, no Porter, no Garcia at the end of his run. Obviously, they're from Philly, so maybe not. There's no Thurman. There's no Mikey Garcia. There's no names where you're like, oh, he did that to him. And now he moves to 154, and I don't know who he fought. Usman Lima? I don't particularly care who that guy is. Yeah, Boots doesn't need tune-ups at this point in his career. So, can Hearn make the Fundora fight? Nope. Could he make a Jamel Charlo fight if Charlo came to 154? No. What fights could he make at 154? He will follow the standard Matchroom methodology. They will reheat somebody. They might find that Argentinian guy that gave Charlo trouble. Might reheat Tony Harrison. They might boil in the bag Tim Tszyu. Do you know what I mean? That they're going to get someone cooking and then tell us, look, this is a guy who fought for a world title. This is going to tell us where Boots is. Because Hearn doesn't have access to those sorts of fights like Virgil Ortiz. He doesn't call the shots. But Ortiz is a fight we want to see. Fundora's a fight we want to see. Hearn lacks the leverage to make those fights happen. How do we know that? He could easily have made that fight happen on Saturday if he had the leverage. Like, burning up Boots' training camp mileage on guys like Lima makes no sense. So what do? Do you call Crawford down to 154 for a fight with Boots? Probably not. So what do you do? Because that demolition job he did in the round is what you expect. I think Boots is one of the nastiest punches you're going to see. He's a kid who gets boxing. Just intuitively, like Crawford, they just have this intuitive feel for what punches need to happen where. And there's another young kid in Philly, Salim Bey, who seems to have that vibe about him too. So look out for him to come on stream in the next couple of years or so, because he's looking good. But I love Boots. I love watching him fight, but you got to fight somebody. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I don't think Hearn can make that happen. Yeah, so in terms of where you go next with Boots, maybe an American fight, Charles Conwell, maybe. Do you dig up Madrimov again and say, well, let's benchmark what Boots does to him versus what Crawford did? You mean that all these kind of like gatekeeper names, right? We're still back to the gatekeepers, but we've got to put them in the mix with guys like your Fundoras, etc. I want to see that because I think he's real. Like, I think what Boots has is real, but we're not going to know how real until it's tested. And so he needs a fight that gets us excited about the Virgil Ortiz fight. I don't know where you're going to make that. I think Madrimov would do it. Let's say he stopped Madrimov, and then you're like, oh, okay. Oh, he's not messing around. Then that's a different conversation. But we'll see. I thought it was interesting, though. I don't know if anyone watched. And shout out to Greg Hackett. So I can't remember who his fighter was on the night, but I definitely saw the clips of Greg Hackett in the corner. You could hear him. You know, as I told you, this podcast, man, we unearth talent everywhere. But let's go back to Hearn. He hates it when the Americans ask him questions that we would ask him. You know, when he hasn't got the shield of IFL and he hasn't got the shield of Charlie Parsons, you know, with their low ball questions and their rimming activities and all that sort of stuff. He struggles when the Americans just ask obvious questions, and they do. They go, look, do you have the pull to make the fights for Boots? And then Hearn gets upset by going, oh, you're being negative. When history has shown, Hearn has a very basic model, and it is sign a fighter, 2 meaningless fights, arrange something for them to be number one contender. They fight for a title as mandatory, get a really shitty split of the purse. Yeah. Win, lose, doesn't even matter. At that point, they get avoided by everybody. And then Hearn just comes in the media and goes, oh, no one wants to fight my guy. And then that guy leaves Matchroom and gets all the fights he wants. Strange that. Yet people in Britain will still tell you Eddie Hearn's the best promoter in the world with no evidence. So yeah, they were roasting Hearn, and Hearn, like, he was starting to get tetchy. And to be fair, I don't mind that version of Hearn. Like, I'd rather because the tetchiness is real. Like, because he's like, look, I'm working, like, I sacrifice family time to give you guys fights, and you're here asking me questions. Who do you think you are? That version of Hearn, I don't mind. Him just always trying to be the cheeky chappy, the smart, that thing's dead, mate. He might have to do the heel turn and just become the nasty, cantankerous promoter. That might work for him because it's closer to who he really is. Just saying. But yeah, once again, Hearn goes to Philadelphia and it's a complete bust. Yeah, a complete bust in terms of developing fighters. So I don't know what you do. Like, I just think Matchroom are on their last legs right now. I think the Joshua Halo effect is gone. I think they're struggling. And that brings us on to the next thing we're going to talk about. They really need Ben Whittaker to be the guy we think he is. They need Ben Whittaker to be the guy. They need Ben Whittaker to deliver what Joshua Buatsi was supposed to. Yeah? So let's use him as a case study. Who did Hearn put him in with? So if you go back and look at Buatsi's Matchroom run, the high point of his Matchroom run was Craig Richards. That was a high point of his Matchroom run. Bearing in mind that Callum Smith was on the roster at the same time, we didn't get that fight till both. Well, not both, but definitely Buatsi was off Matchroom. I don't know who Callum Smith's with now. Look how long it took for that fight to happen. That fight could have happened at any time between 2017 and now. Instead, what did Hearn give us? What did he give us? Reynold Quinlan, Liam Conroy, Bolotniks. Do you mean Kalic? That's what he gave us for Joshua Buatsi, a guy he said would be world champion. Why did he do that? That's all he could do. He doesn't spend money on his fighters. And so Ben Whittaker's got to have his head on a swivel at Matchroom because they will use him for sure, but he needs to make sure he uses them. Because if you were Eddie right now, what would you be doing? Right? I'd be looking at Ben going, I need to get Ben in position for a world title by the end of next year. Even if he doesn't fight for one, he needs to be in that position where 2027, he's fighting for world titles. Because by 2027, he's going to be, I'm guessing, 30. Do you know what I mean? So if the belts ain't happening then, when are they going to happen? So how do you get there quickly? You know, he's going to fight someone like a Zach Chelly, right? Rivals since they were kids. Zach can say, look, I'll welcome you to the pro division. Like, this is not the amateurs where you were the king. Yeah, this is the pro division. You're going to find out, you know, this is a lot harder. Okay? So you're going to go with Zach Chelly first. And then you want to go cross-platform, right? Because that's always the best way to do it. To say, all right, we'll go to Franks and fight one of his guys. And he might get Ezra Taylor. And that feels like an East versus West Midlands derby. So we can make that happen. that doesn't need London involvement. Once you've done those two, the fans are like, okay, Ben's won those two. All right, he's got to fight one of the guys we know. So you might get a Dan Aziz, you might get a Craig Richards, you might get a Zach Parker. You see what I mean? And then that's the third fight. Yeah? And I think you can do all of those next year. Then 2027, who's got the belts? If they're fragmented and let's say Callum Smith's got a belt, then you got to fight Callum Smith. Now, that would be my plan if I had Ben's career to map out. Okay? Chelly, Ezra Taylor, for me, Dan Aziz, into a fight against a Callum Smith type guy. If Boatsie's got a belt, Boatsie. Yeah, that's a 4-fight run. But they'll like I said, Hearn will get someone, put some boil in the bag in there, get him out and go, right, he's fighting this guy. Or they'll pull someone up from middleweight, which will be a shame. Ben doesn't need that. What he needs right now are fights that build him and prepare him for 12 grueling rounds for a world title, in my opinion. So that's how I'd have done the career. I'd have had Ben in fights where there's pressure on his shoulders all the time, because that's what champions live with. And then, yeah, get it cracking. But if you look at it from a business perspective, Ben's one of the better self-promoters in the game and has been for a long time. People forget the Benzo era. Do you know what I mean? When he thought he could make drill tunes, and I'm glad that stopped. The fashion stuff is not new. The swag is not new. Him being larger than life is not new. This is who he's been for at least a decade, if not more. But for a decade, he's been able to express it. Do you know what I mean? Because he earned the right to do so. So he's been a great self-promoter. He's already got that traction. All he needs Hearn to do is promote him to the broadcasters, promote him to the money men, and get him platformed. That is all. He doesn't even have to do that much. Like Hearn's voice isn't what it used to be. Like Ben can speak for himself. But it feels like a marriage made in heaven, I think. Like if those two sat in a room together, I don't know who would talk the craziest shit. I don't know who would take it to a mad place. They might feed off each other. Because like from what I hear, and weirdly enough, like I haven't spent a lot of time with Ben as an adult, if any. I just hear that he's a quiet guy, considered guy, measured guy, which is good. And I think that's important. And that's what you want in a boxer. A guy who can flick the switch and then flick it back down again. So you don't live your gimmick. That's important. And then all he needs around him now are 3 good people. Whoever they are. Whether it's a lawyer, a manager, 3 good people around him that just guide him now. And keep all the noise away from him. All the noise, all the nonsense. Just keep that all away from him. And then let's see where he goes. And look, I feel for Ben Shalalalalom, Shalom, Shalom. I feel for Ben because Ben put a lot of work and a lot of backing into Ben Whittaker, and to see this happen, it's tough. But business is business. I don't know if Ben wants to be burning that much of his budget with the BBC on Ben Whittaker. They might do business again further down the line when Ben, jumps on the zone or something. But I do feel for Ben Shalom. Like, when you put your work in, it's hard. And I remember, like, when they were umming and ahhing over whether to sign with Boxer, and I remember my 2 pennies were, Ben's going to fight the same people over the next 3 years, regardless of who he signs with. So go somewhere where you're going to get the most exposure for 3 years, and then you pick Frank or Eddie. And I think it's gone that way. And I wish Ben all the best. Like, I just want to see a British talent fulfill his potential. I really, really do. I want us to get back to that era where we had a whole load of world champions. And we could be excited about boxing. Like, I got asked a question the other day, what I think the best year for boxing's been recently. And I said 2017. 2017 is 8 years ago. Wow, that's crazy. But that, by far, the best year we've had for boxing from a televised perspective was 2017. And we had all the world champions then. And we need to get back to that. And guys like Ben are important. If Ben can't win a world title, nobody can. Let's just pack up and go home. Because then we've got nothing in the cupboard. if Ben doesn't win a world championship. We have absolutely zip in the cupboard. Can we just talk about the middleweights for a second? Fight coming up, right? George Liddard versus Kieran Conway. Ballsy move. Like, I know I've just bemoaned like fighters aren't tough anymore. The ball's on Liddard to go after Kieran Conway, and here's why I say that. Conway is tough. He may not be the most refined. He's tough and he has enough skill, right? I think he used to box. Did he box for Far Cotton back in the days? Yeah, and he's just a good, tough middleweight. Like a guy who, if you're not really on your game, you're going to lose to him. So credit to George Liddard for taking that on. The guy that beat Junaid Boston in the amateurs. So let's see if he can do what Boston couldn't do. Yeah? Let's see if he can show that toughness. That's what this is going to be about. Conway will demand toughness from Liddard. And if Liddard can't deliver that, it's going to be a long night for him at your call on Friday. So you know, make sure you tune in for that one, because I think that's a really, really interesting fight. Other point I want to make. When's the last time we saw Denzel Bentley in the ring? No, I'm going to let you figure that out. Too long is the answer. If you go back 5 years when people like, you know, who's going to entertain the public? Denzel was the guy during the pandemic. He entertained, like, you know, hurting people, causing mayhem, cutting eyes, all sorts. And then it stopped. And now part of it is he's a very expensive guy to put out now, right? Did former world title challenger, multiple British champion, all that sort of stuff he's done. And so you're trying to find a dance partner for him who can justify a six-figure person. You know, Denz is a family man now, so these things are very important. And like, I think, is he meant to be fighting for the WBA or the WBO? And they're ordering purse bids for that. And now we're going to see how serious Queensberry are in terms of backing Denzel. Because I'd love to see him fight for a title in the UK on a big card. Because if ever someone has been an asset to British boxing, it's him. A guy who showed how tough he is. Mentally and physically. You know, people know the personal issues he had before he fought Nathan Heaney. Still showed up. Didn't have to. Most people would have understood him not fighting, but he fought. Yes, he lost, and you know what would happen in the rematch. Everybody knows what would happen in the rematch. And like we saw, he looked after Brad Pauls pretty well. And, you know, shout out to Brad. It looks like he might be on the way back with Warren Boxing Management. Wish him all the best if he is. But yeah, I think Denzel deserves a better deal out of boxing. And so does Chris Billum-Smith. Let's not forget that. Like, what's happened to his career? A guy who basically revitalized boxing on the South Coast. And no one's bidding for that. This is crazy, right? This is absolutely crazy. No one is bidding for the Chris Billum-Smith versus Roman Freese fight. No one's bid for it. Not Boxer, not Queensberry, not Sky. No one's bid for it. How heartbreaking is that if you're Chris Billum-Smith and you have entertained? And now they're like, well, you know, he ain't got a belt anymore. What's the point? That's a real shame. And that's what happens when you're nobody's pet project. And a lot of boxing is about being the right person's pet project. It doesn't get talked about enough. You've got to play the political game. You've got to know how to curry favor with your paymasters, because then they'll always think about you. You've always got to be front of mind, because some of these decisions get made in the moment. What about this fight? And this person fights this person. Oh yeah, let's do that. That can happen in the moment. And if you're not front of mind for a promoter, it gets tricky. That's why when you're a fighter, you got to be looking at your manager like, what are you really doing for me? Are you making me front of mind at the board? Are you making me front of mind amongst the promoters? What are you doing? Because if you're not doing that, you're not bringing me any money. But I don't know. I wish all those guys the best. They're finding out, man. Boxing when you're on the wrong side of 30 is a cruel business. Dan's finding this out, man. He had to go out and box in Nigeria. Do you know what I mean? And there's still no sign that they're going to put Dan in with anybody. Like, there are easy fights you can make with Dan Aziz. Spider's an easy fight that will do numbers, right? But why aren't people making these fights? Because Dan's no one's pet project and Craig is no one's pet project. Politics matter, guys. When in this game of boxing, politics matter, positioning matters. It's just like being in ancient Rome. The closer you are to Caesar, the more opportunities you get. God, I have rambled for ages. I am so sorry. So sorry. I just want to wrap up and talk about Ricky Hatton. Obviously, I did the episode about Ricky Hatton. If you scroll down a couple of episodes, you can grab that. So a second eulogy wouldn't make any sense. I was disappointed by a lot of parts of that funeral. For me, the focus of Ricky Hatton's funeral should have been threefold. 1, Ricky Hatton, the man, and his legacy. 2, the Hatton family, who, when the music stops and everything goes quiet, are going to have to shoulder the majority of this burden. 3, the people of Manchester who made him their hero. That is all the coverage had to include. Okay? I didn't need to see Tony Bellew. I didn't need to see all these other... Why would Sky Sports do that? I don't really understand this. Why would you use a funeral as an opportunity to go, oh, look at all of these boxers? What does that mean to the fans? Like, we're here for Ricky. So what did that really mean for the fans? I thought it was in bad taste. I thought it was rude. I thought it was disrespectful to focus on the boxers, not the people. The people of Manchester should have had their voice heard. That's all we cared about. Ricky Hatton, the Hatton family, the people of Manchester. I didn't need to see, try to turn it into the Oscars. You know, oh, look at this fight and that fight. He's posting all these pictures. Whoever runs the Sky Boxing social media account, they shouldn't be sacked, but someone needs to pull them into an office and go, that felt very distasteful. A lot of the stuff at the funeral, from what I'm hearing, was very distasteful. People making it about them. You know, people wanting to make speeches, wanting to talk so they could be seen and they could be part of the moment, instead of just playing their position and keeping quiet. Look, on terms of the speeches, I don't know what Adam's actual relationship with Ricky Hatton is, so I can't say whether he was most qualified to give a speech. I don't know. Honestly, I genuinely don't know. It felt heartfelt, and you could hear the voice cracking with emotion, so fair enough. But were there more qualified people? I don't know, but do you know what I mean? Yeah, the preacher there, Billy Graham was there. There wasn't enough attention put on him. So shout out to Jane Couch for reminding the public who was really involved in Ricky Hatton's career, and not the hangers-on and the blaggers that Sky Sports wants to put front and center. They shouldn't be the ones who set the agenda for someone's funeral like that. I thought it was disgusting. I thought it was disgusting. I thought it was in terrible taste. I thought it disrespected so many people who loved Ricky, so many people who put into Ricky. And as cold as this sounds, if all the people that were being pictured and all the people that were preening and posing and trying to make themselves center of attention, if all of them had rung Ricky Hatton once a week, would we be in this position? Vultures, there to pick at the carcass of what was once a great boxer for their own gratification. So when they tell you boxing's a dirty game, yeah, it's not always the promoters and the managers. Boxers are equally as rattish. It was disgusting. And that will live long in my memory, like the feeling of dejection and disappointment. But the important thing is to say what a great send-off. The city of Manchester turned up for Ricky Hatton, and they honoured one of their own. They honoured a man that gave them so much entertainment, and they showed love to a true icon of British boxing. That's how it should be done. That's the story. That's the headline. And on that note, I'll say thanks very much for listening and take care.
Hope everybody's enjoyed Terry's take. Good episode. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Okie dokie. Well, peace out. Pop, pop, bang.